Oh, hey. So I went around Ireland and I went to the Dublin Airport to see what they thought about this whole gender issue. And here's what I found. So, how many genders are there?
Two.
And why do you think that? How did you kind of get that view?
I learned it first of all from the Bible, and God said it. He creates man and woman, and yeah, that's my answer.
All right. And when you're walking around, how often do you see someone who's, let's say, from the LGBTQ community?
Sometimes, but in Ireland, in Dublin, I saw a lot more than in Austria, where I'm from.
You're
Yes,
from Austria?
yes,
Oh,
yes.
that's awesome. And then, last thing, do you think anything should change about the laws or the kind of ideas that have been put in place and that exist today?
I think that they should live however they want, but they also should leave us alone and live our way of life.
So, like, don't force me to call you
Yes, yes.
something, right? What do you think? Do you think transgender men should be allowed in women's sports?
No, I don't think that that's a good idea because men are physically stronger, and I mean biology says it. So I don't think that that's a good idea.
So, how many genders do you think that there are?
Two.
Two. And how'd you kind of develop that view, or what makes you think that?
I think that there are only so many things that you can do in regards to hormones. It doesn't necessarily change your gender. It might change your body type, but I think your gender is one or the other.
So it's binary, basically.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
where you're born. Yeah.
Okay. And then when you're walking around just for a stroll or something, how many people from this LGBTQ community or gay or trans, how many of these people do you see walking around?
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I would say, I don't know, like maybe 25% of the people that you see every day now.
Yeah, it's really gone up with the number of people. Uh, and then last question. Do you think anything should be changed around this issue? Let's say laws, let's say what people think about this. Um, what should be really be changed around this?
I, I don't think a lot, to be honest. I think maybe anyone who's gone through gender surgery, if they want to change things like documents, like passports or IDs, like a driving license, I think it should be maybe a little bit easier for them to do that and put themselves down is if they actually have physically transitioned. I think on the other hand, sometimes it's too easy for people to call themselves a certain thing. Yeah, I think it all depends on the extent of the actual transition. If you're actually physically a male or physically a female, I think that's what should define it.
So, do you think a physical male who transitions to a woman should be able to play in women's sports? What do you think about that?
No, well, it depends because, like I say, hormones and things like that only do so much. I think men are genetically built different women, and when it comes down to things like sports, I think it's an unfair advantage because men genetically have more muscle mass, more things like that, and that hormones aren't going to really change that in a competitive sport level. So yeah, I think yeah, transgender, when that element comes into things like competitive sports, especially like Olympics or that kind of thing, I think no, I think that should be removed. Maybe they should have their own. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So, how many genders do you think that there are?
Two.
And how did you get this view, or why do you think that?
Because I feel like people are only born boy or girl. They can change when they're older, change to a different gender, but there is only two genders.
When you're walking around, how often do you see someone who's from this LGBTQ community, or who's gay or trans or something along those lines?
Probably like, don't know, like 80% of the time.
80% of the time. And final question: do you think there's anything that should be changed around this issue? Let's say laws. Let's say people's opinions.
I think some laws in different countries should be changed that like gay people can get married and gay people can be together.
So you think we should change that law? Yeah. And then, well, I guess I'll ask you, what do you think of this? So I know transgender men are going into women's sports. Do you think that should be allowed?
Yeah, I feel like if you're identifying as a woman or a man, you should be allowed to do whatever you want, really.
So how many genders do you think that there are?
I think there's two genders. I also think that there's two genders.
So, how did you guys develop this view? Where did it come from?
Well, I just think there's two genders because I was taught that way, and I think there's too many genders, obviously.
I think it's just kind of what we've been taught to, like friends and family. Um, it's kind of hard to explain, but like genetically, there is only two genders, and that is a fact.
Makes sense. Yeah, so it's traditional and it's scientifically proven. Awesome. So when you're walking around the streets here in Ireland, how many of the people from the, let's say, LGBTQ community, how many of these people do you see walking around?
Well, I don't really know many people from the LGBTQ community, but you do see them around here. So it's not that common, but you will see occasionally a few people walk around. So yeah.
Um, it's not that common, but like you, it, you wouldn't be too surprised if you were walking around and you just saw a gay couple or something. Um, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't really bother me at all. But it's not really that common. It'd be more common around Dublin City than like a small town like here. But yeah.
So is this LGBTQ issue a big issue here in Ireland, or because it's big in America? What's it like here?
Well, like Niall was saying, I don't really mind LGBTQ, but I don't think it's really a big issue here. I don't really mind it, so I think it's a pretty okay deal here. It's not really that problematic. So
I think because there's not as many LGBTQ people here in Ireland as there is in America, it's not really talked about as much, and people just don't really care about it as much.
All right, so that's interesting. Less controversial here, I guess, or less big of an issue here. And then final question: do you think something should change here, or anything should change around this issue? Laws, the ideas of the people. Should anything change?
well, I don't really mind about the laws here about the LGBTQ community, but maybe like in the sports, it should be changing because sometimes like a man could change into a woman and then dominate in the women's division in sports. So that's I think that should be changed. Yeah.
Yeah, I also agree with Jack. I think it's really unfair that transgender women are playing in like genetically women divisions, um, because it's not that like women are bad at sports. It's just men do have like a genetical advantage. So I think something around that should change. And like if you're transgender, I don't really care. If you don't identify as a man or a woman, I don't really care. It's just I don't really believe in that. So
And so now I'm gonna answer the questions that I've been asking. The first question I asked is how many genders are there? And I know that there are two genders, male and female. The next question I asked is why? Why do you feel this way? And the reason I know this is because there's two sets of chromosomes. There's XY, which is male, and there's XX, which is female. You can't change your chromosomes and you can't change your genders. It does not work that way. Men have their own unique genitalia, and so do women. And throughout all of history, there's only been men and women. And just because someone today wants to call themselves a Zim Zam, I don't have to call them that either. They don't get to create that gender bracket. It doesn't work like that. Call yourself a Zim Zam, and I'm going to call you a him hem. My next question was how often do we see someone like this, someone who identifies in the LGBTQ community? And the answer is quite often. When you're walking around outside, you see people like that walking around more and more on a daily basis. Even walking around the capital of Ireland, there are more pride flags than Irish flags in the capital of Ireland. So yeah, it's pretty common. Even at school, every class that I go to has at least one person who identifies like this. And the reason for this is because they're being told by their superiors, by their parents, by their role models, by the media that it's normal to be confused about your gender or to switch genders. And it is not normal for that to happen. And it's harmful to kids who might take hormone blockers and might regret it for the rest of their lives. Kids aren't even allowed to get tattoos because they're permanent. So why should they be allowed to change their whole gender? I stole that argument from somewhere, but it makes sense. And the last question that I was asking is what changes should be made. Here's the changes that should be made. If someone identifies as something, they're welcome to do that. I don't really care. Where I care is if they try to make me call them that. They don't get to demand that I call them whatever they want. I may view myself as a smart, handsome, intelligent young man, which I am, but I don't expect everyone else to call me that. I mean, they just do, but I don't expect it from them. I don't force them to do that. I don't get mad if they don't. And that's what's happening with a lot of these people from the LGBTQ community. They get angry if you call them something that they claim that they're not. With that being said, if you call yourself something and change your gender yourself, that doesn't change all the rules that are in place. If you're a biological man and you identify as a woman, that doesn't mean you can go to a woman's bathroom and make it look like the men's bathroom. That's not fair to women. And it also doesn't mean that men should be able to go to women's sports leagues. How is that fair? How can Leah Thomas, a biological man, fairly go to a women's swimming league and dominate them all and win every time? It is not fair, it is wrong, and it is unjust, and we can't let it happen. And so those are my answers to the questions that I've been asking. And I'd love to hear your answer. So please say how you feel about each of these questions and say it in the comments. And I will read each and every comment and each and every one of your opinions. So to recap, most people said that there's only two genders. That's what they thought because it's biologically proven like that. And that they don't really care what other people do. They just think that there's two genders, and that they're fine with what other people do. Most of them said that they don't want to be forced to call other people something, and they can call themselves whatever the heck they want. And they've been seeing more people who are in the LGBTQ community. Most people said that. It's a date. It's a date.